Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast. I have recorded this episode not once, not twice, but now 3 times. So, if only I could go back and pick the best parts of all of the recordings, that would be dandy. I cannot do that. So, we're starting over for a third time. I double, triple, quadruple checked that my microphone was working. The second time, I don't even know what happened. It cut out weird. I don't know. The universe was just really against me last week, which is annoying because it actually made more work for me, which we did not love that. We did not love that vibe. So we're back, we're here, and we're actually talking about prenatals today. I posted this on Instagram to tell you guys that the episode wasn't coming out last Tuesday. And then I tried to record it again. That didn't work. And I was like, you know what? No episode this week because we're going away. I want to not stress about this right now. I do not have the time to do this for a third time. But it's funny because when I posted that, that my opinion on prenatal vitamins have changed, I've actually been getting a lot of messages. So it's time to clear the air. I think I scared some people. I actually had a client this morning, a private practice client, who was like, I'm still taking the prenatal that you prescribed me last time. Is that not good anymore? And I was like, no, that's perfect. It's just that my overall approach when working with a new client has drastically changed with the prenatal aspect. So let me explain what I'm talking about. Our very, very first episode on the podcast that I recorded and released back in 2022 was about the top 4 things to look for in a prenatal vitamin. And 2 years ago, I did have a very extremist approach to, if you are not on one of these top-notch prenatals, we need to switch you immediately. And that was how I built out plans. It was one of the first things I did with a lot of my clients, unless they were on something that checked all of the boxes. Over the last 2 years, a lot of things have changed in terms of finding new research, but also in terms of having a truthfully more relaxed approach when it comes to prenatal specifically. And why? Because at the end of the day, a prenatal vitamin is not what's going to get you pregnant. And couples are coming to work with me inside Fertility Confidence Method because they're trying to get pregnant and it's not happening for them on their desired timeline. And when we're building out a fertility plan that's based on their unique fertility identifiers, the reality is that a prenatal is not super high on the list of achieving the goals that we are looking at working on. Now, I'm not saying stop your prenatal, it's useless, you don't need it. We don't take people off their prenatals. And if you're not on a prenatal, we are typically either adding in a full spectrum prenatal, or if pill count is already very high, we're at least adding in a folate so that you're getting that neural tube support. But here's how a prenatal vitamin should be used. And I do think that there just is this, I don't know, it's because our preconception care is so shitty, right? And it was, even though I am who I am now, back in the day when I was like, oh, okay, we want to be doing this. And I had a conversation with my doctor. They were just like, go to the drugstore and grab a prenatal and you're young, so all good. That was the extent of the conversation. And that is the extent of our preconception care vibes in mainstream medicine. And I think that there's negatives to that because there's more to preconception care that should be happening at the very beginning, if not months or years before you even want to get pregnant, but story for another time. And definitely you're likely listening to this because you're past that point, right? So we can't go back in time. But because of that vibe that mainstream medicine is giving off, we have a lot of women who come and chat with us about working together. And when we ask them, what have you been doing to support your fertility? a lot of times the answer is like, oh, well, I take a prenatal vitamin. And they're like, give me my gold star. Like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And we have to sit there and go, okay, cool. But like, that's actually not supporting your fertility. The prenatal vitamin is important to keep your nutrient stores high. Absolutely. But when we're talking about, for example, like egg quality and needing antioxidants to support egg quality, the dosages of the nutrients in a prenatal are by nowhere close to therapeutic dosages of the antioxidants that we need for egg quality. But they are therapeutic-ish to just keep you from being depleted through pregnancy and after. That's the goal of the prenatal. We then have the knowledge that folate or folic acid reduces the risk of neural tube defects. So that is a huge benefit of having adequate stores of folate through pregnancy and pre-pregnancy that we get from our prenatal. But the reality is that the nutrients that we're getting from the prenatal, we really should be getting from food. And the prenatal then just becomes bonus. We should be getting a wide variety of colorful fruits and veggies, good, healthy carbohydrates, proteins that are giving us the nutrients that our body needs. And then it's like this prenatal becomes the dessert, essentially. And a lot of times I think we're putting a lot of like pressure on this prenatal vitamin to be something that it's not. And a lot of times when women hear that like, well, a prenatal vitamin is actually not improving your fertility, and they kind of look at me like, what? Well, this is what my doctor told me to do. Well, yeah, we don't want you to be deficient in nutrients, but like first we should have a conversation around changing your diet, right? So that's really the approach we've then taken over the last year of like, okay, it always comes through food first and then topping up with a prenatal. And everyone's journey with the prenatal is going to be a little bit different. So for someone who is really picky and really not eating a well-diverse diet, I am probably going to recommend a higher quality, but also higher cap count of a prenatal and get them more nutrients in pill form compared to someone who has a really good, whole food, Mediterranean-esque style nutrition and eating habits where they are getting a lot of good quality nutrients from their food. Then we can get away with just a little top up of like a 2-cap or a 3-cap pill that we use. So there's also a bit of flexibility here depending on your personal journey with how you're eating and what does your nutrition look like and how are you absorbing it, and all those things. So we want to take that into account. And we don't have as strict standards, I feel, these days in terms of what makes up a good prenatal. And the reality is that most of them are not that great. And most of them are not that great because really we should be getting it through our food. So that's something we want to remember. Navigating the supplement world, even as a practitioner, can be incredibly frustrating. And if you are anything like me, it's really easy to be drawn into those brands with the most beautiful branding, the most beautiful bottles, and just assume that that's a good product because it looks good on the outside. Or we see the ingredients that we've read about in the Facebook group or we saw on that TikTok, and we assume that that is what we need. But when we learn more, it turns out that the names were right, but the dosages were wrong. Needed's products are more than just their beautiful branding. They've formulated optimal nutrient products from the ground up, leveraging a comprehensive review of clinical research, which as an evidence-based practitioner, I'm obsessed with. They use their in-practice data and insights from over 4,000 perinatal and women's health experts. And there are products that are created for women like you on their fertility journey, on their pregnancy journey by other women who understand what you need. I also love personally that they are the first perinatal nutrition company that's B Corp and climate neutral certified. So you can find out more about Needed's products and some of my faves over at thisisneeded.com and enjoy 20% off with the code Dr. Kelsey. The other piece from that first episode is we had a very strong stance on like folate versus folic acid. I feel like about 5 years ago, there's this big rumbling in the like OBGYN space around like folate versus folic acid, and all of us like alternative care practitioners pushing methylfolate and how like that's actually not evidence-based. And there was a lot of conflicting information out there that has truly put me in a spot, and not just me, I'm sure other practitioners as well, in a spot where we're kind of like, like what is the right answer? Like this research article says, like all of the research in neural tube defects is actually done in folic acid. So like we should be using that. But like we know if you have an MTHFR gene mutation, you're probably not using folic acid. So then we should be using this, but not everyone's getting genetic testing. It's very confusing. I'll be perfectly honest. So I do still err on the side of like, if I'm putting you on a prenatal or you're asking me what like I want to switch or what does this look like, we're typically using a professional brand that uses methylfolate. And I'm comfortable with that. But if you come and work with me and you're on a prenatal that has folic acid, I'm not as quick to swap you off of that as I was 2+ years ago. So I do think we have some wiggle room here in terms of what's appropriate. And if you've had the genetic testing done, we want to make the necessary adjustments for that. The other piece is absorbability, right? We talked about absorbable forms in that first podcast. And if you want to go back and listen to it, it's the very first one. So you're going to scroll all the way back to episode 1. And that's also true. That still stands. If we're taking a generic, my gosh, the word just totally flew out of my brain. Like, I want to say Shoppers Drug Mart, but I know that that's a Canadian thing, but like drugstores, that's the word I'm looking for. A generic like drugstore, something you grabbed at Target or whatever. Oftentimes they're not giving you the best absorbable forms of nutrients. So things that are like oxide at the end, so like magnesium oxide or calcium oxide, those aren't as good as our other forms. That still stands true, like what we talked about in that first episode. But again, when someone comes to me and they're already taking one, I'll let them know like, hey, you have this. That's cool. If it's working for you, I'm okay with that. These aren't the most absorbable forms, but as long as we're doing X, Y, Z when it comes to nutrition, I'm less stressed about this, right? We don't have to have such a like extremist view on I have to have the top quality, best option available, especially if you have a really good diet, right? And then the other one that really has been a big topic of conversation inside our community is choline. So we actually talked about choline a few episodes ago and how it's so cool what's coming out in the research about choline, and that we're seeing lower, again, kind of working with folic acid, lower rates of neural tube defects, but also improved health in kiddos after birth. So they're actually following children whose mothers were on higher doses of choline through pregnancy and seeing lower levels of things like ADHD and autism, and allergies, which I think is really fascinating given we're like, we live in such an atopic, like allergy prone society these days. And I do think that more will come out of this. There's obviously some really interesting impact that choline has on brain development. So we are using a lot more choline with our clients, typically not till pregnancy. So it's not often something we're adding in the fertility stages because we're not seeing benefit in the studies in that realm. But most prenatals don't have choline, or they have very little. And we know from the literature, we want to be getting like anywhere from 500 to 900 milligrams a day. And we can do decent in food. Like go back and listen to the episode. We talk about some of the food options. We can do decent damage with food, but we still likely need extra. So that's one thing that, again, we get in our heads, oh, I'm taking a prenatal, that's all I need, when there are still specific nutrients that are just not at adequate dosing in a prenatal that are important for pregnancy specifically. So we want to tweak that. And that's something that we do inside FCM is like, once our clients get pregnant, we're not like, okay, see you later. Like, thanks for coming. We're still supporting them through that journey and making sure that we're personalizing that experience for them and looking at like, hey, from nutrition, are you eating XYZ? No? Okay, we probably should add in this much then, and helping them to get to those levels that we're seeing therapeutically in the research. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the real good takeaway from this episode that probably sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo of me rambling, because this is the third time and I'm like, did I actually hit all of the points that I did every time? Likely not. Is nutrition matters over everything, right? And we're doing women a huge disservice by just saying when they're telling their doctors, I want to get pregnant, and their doctors are saying, okay, cool, go home, have sex, take a prenatal, like come back in a year. I mean, there's lots of reasons why that statement is doing women a disservice and couples a disservice, but I also think it puts this sort of philosophy in brains of like, all I need to do is take a prenatal and the prenatal has me covered. And that's not the truth. And a few years ago, I also was like, a prenatal is so important. And now after doing this for so many years and helping, honestly, thousands of couples make babies, I do think it's important, but it's not as important from a fertility angle of all the other things we should and could be doing. So I'm not telling you to not take one. I'm not telling you to stop, but I am telling you that we don't need to be taking like the crazy prenatals, or we don't need to be worried, is my prenatal perfect, as much as we want to be concerned over, am I doing the right things for my unique fertility identifiers? Am I eating a well-balanced, well-rounded nutrient profile diet? And then the prenatal is just dessert. It's just bonus on top. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, please shoot me over a message. Follow me on Instagram at Fertility Confidence Method. Happy to help. And I will see you guys in the next episode.